And you are here on SCW, the wrestling channel. Going to be watching this hopefully on YouTube and as well, hopefully listening on Spotify and other audio apps as well for all good podcasting. Welcome to us once again. My name is Steve. I'm here today with George. We're going to be talking about WWE. We've got NXT 30 coming up, of course, the Takeover, the 30th Takeover. And, of course, we're going to talk about the big event, SummerSlam, as well. We're going to be giving our thoughts on the matches that will be coming up and also what matches we expect and want as well. And, in fact, George has even put together a little bit of a dream card for later in the show. But, George, first off, let's get a bit of a word from you. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show again. I'm looking forward to discussing some wrestling as always.
Yeah, it's going to be good to talk about a bit of WWE. And as we say, we've got a lot of big events coming up. And I think we should start with NXT because, of course, no matches have been announced yet, really, apart from we know that we're going to get a ladder match for the vacant North American Championship. So we'll quickly just touch on that to begin with. Of course, Keith Lee was the one to vacate the belt through choice. He wanted to give opportunity. Was you a fan of that booking direction? Or did you actually believe to yourself that maybe it was a bit of lazy booking? Would it have not been better for Keith Lee to have dropped the belt in some sort of format and been cost by Karrion Kross?
I think that would have been nice. The way to have done that would have been a triple threat. Obviously, you don't want Keith Lee to get pinned, but it's great that they've got the belt off him so quickly. So they're not going to have him with two belts, which means he's not taking up so much time. He can focus just on the world title, which is obviously the more important title.
Absolutely. Do you think, though, it does sort of put a bit of damage on the North American Championship, or is it recovered? Because we've now got so many people that are actually vying to try and get the belt. In fact, we've got a series of triple threat matches that will be over the next few weeks. Of course, so far we know we've got Bronson Reed, who won the first qualifying match to get into the ladder match. Do you think that having these matches actually makes the belt still feel important?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's great that they're getting the belt back potentially to somebody that's that level, because clearly Keith Lee had overgrown it.
Yeah, I mean, massively. I mean, I do actually feel for a while that belt had been, like you say, been with people that's more near the main event. We had Johnny Gargano that was a champion. Velveteen Dream had outgrown the belt at the time he had it as well. So I agree with it. It feels nice to have that factor that we could have someone who's literally in the mid-card, someone who can develop that championship, and hopefully they elevate themselves up the card with the belt. We mentioned Bronson Reed, of course, has got himself into the match. We know we've got a qualifying match next week. Finn Balor, of course, the Prince, going to be taking on Dexter Lumis and Timothy Thatcher, which I think sounds like a wild triple threat match. Who are you rooting for to get into the match?
I really like to see Dexter Lumis get into the match. I think Finn Balor, he's better than that title. And I think Timothy Thatcher, although would also be a good pick, I'd really like to see Lumis carry on the good work he's done recently to go up and get potentially a title.
Yeah, I mean, he's been involved with the Undisputed Era, hasn't he? So he's had quite a program going on. I think, like you say, I mean, for me, Finn Balor doesn't need the North American Championship. Perhaps a belt he hasn't had, but at the same time, I agree with you, he probably isn't at that level. He should be focusing perhaps a bit higher at the card at this point. But I do believe that, like you say, either Thatcher or Lumis would be a good shout. I'm going to go for Timothy Thatcher because he's the new face, and I think that him as well, the style of wrestling is, I think it would be interesting to see him in that environment of a ladder match. I think it could be an interesting twist, but Lumis would involve that as well, of course, with his strange characteristics. But who would you like to see fill those other spots into the match? If we had 3 more spots available, how would you like to see that turn out? Who would you like to see in place?
Okay, so my first one would be Damian Priest. I think clearly following his great work and the face turn he's done recently, I think they need to continue that. So I think he's naturally would be good in that sort of slot. I think if we're looking at other people on the roster as well that may be suitable, I think you have to go for people such as, let's have a quick look and see. I would go for like a Roderick Strong as well. I think he's capable. I think he's another one that deserves a belt. I think he's another one that's really, really good. And if I'm looking for a final person, who would we choose finally? I'd actually like to see Drake Maverick, actually. Although I know he's in this cruiserweight situation with Escobar, I think Drake Maverick probably was so over when he re-signed his contract. I think he would be good, particularly in that division as well, or that belt, to gather that belt.
I agree with you entirely. In fact, you actually picked a couple of people that I would actually put in there myself, actually. One of them, of course, being Damian Priest. I think, like you say, a natural fit. He's quite a high flyer for his size as well. I think he would be quite well done in the ladder match. And as well there, I mean, Drake Maverick was someone I had in mind to put in there because, like you say, with how over he is. It's interesting you picked Roderick Strong because it'd be a second chance for him. And I actually expect You know, the traditional thing with NXT, they usually give a second chance towards the end to the people that go out. So I'm actually going to make a prediction. I think that both Timothy Thatcher and Dexter Lumis will actually make the match. So whoever loses, I think, will win that back-off match. But the other name that I did put in instead was probably not one I think you're a fan of, but good old Cameron Grimes, because he seems to be at the moment involved with a lot on NXT, and I imagine that a takeover performance is definitely somewhere in his future. But I think that this has got the makings of a good ladder match, and like you said earlier on, was a great point as well. It's great to see that this title perhaps will hopefully elevate someone in the mid-card towards that main event scene, rather than it being a main eventer carrying and holding that belt, because it seems to put people that are in the mid-card lesser and feel less important in the card. They almost go to the lower part of the card because they've got no chance of winning against the Keith Lee. So it's good to see that. Is there anything like to talk about the North American Championship before we move on?
No, I think a good shout on Cameron Grimes. Clearly the fact that he's had a victory over Finn Balor, he would be a good fit, despite my sort of not being a particular fan of him. But this is something that they need to keep elevating. It's a shame for him to get that win over Finn Balor and not do anything with it, really.
Of course, yeah. I mean, of course, he lost recently, didn't he, in this program to Damian Priest? But maybe they can continue that on into the ladder match. We'll have to wait and see. But we mentioned Keith Lee at the start there. He dropped the North American Championship. It looks like he's heading towards a direction with Karrion Kross. The big question here, and it's the $1 million question, Judge, and I'm going to get you to answer this straight away, is this match happening too soon? Are WWE booking themselves into a corner with an unstoppable champion against an unstoppable monster?
Yeah, for me, it's a match that needs many months build. I don't think Karrion Kross needs the title now. I think Karrion Kross has been so over, and he's got so much of build and hype behind him already. And the fact you've got Keith Lee obviously just won the belt. So it's a really hard situation. And I think the only way they get out of it really is either bring in somebody to make it a triple threat that's going to take the pinfall, or they go to a disqualification finish. I think if either one of these gets pinned, I don't think it's the end of them, don't get me wrong, but I think it's going to be hard for them then to recover. I think if Keith Lee loses, his title run's been for a cup of tea, really, which isn't particularly helpful for him, really.
No, it's not. But I must admit, of the two options, if someone had to be pinned, I think Keith Lee would be the best option to be pinned, just purely because, Keith Lee has got so much going for him anyway. He probably could afford a loss, and maybe it could be an idea that he could perhaps be brought up to the main roster after SummerSlam. I mean, it's just a potential idea that they could do. But would they want to take a name like Keith Lee away from the Wednesday Night Wars?
Probably not. The trouble is they haven't really taken a lot of people up from NXT recently. I think it's one of them things that you've got to kind of save, really. I think when he's coming up, it's got to be after Mania, when there's a crowd. I don't think you want to be bringing Keith Lee up with no fans at the moment.
And that's a very key point as well you make there. With no fans, it feels like a lot of things have been delayed this year. And perhaps it would be a good and wise move to delay that move until we've got the fans there so he can really make the impact that he should be. It's a great point you make there with how this can be a bit damaging to both guys, and I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I must admit, I'm very excited for the prospect of this match. I do think that this is one of the biggest takeover matches they could put together. It's just a shame they've not had the opportunity to build Karrion Kross as much as they would like to. But he has been dominant, hasn't he? Beating the likes of Tommaso Ciampa already.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the way they built him, the way he's coming, even the work this week on NXT where he took out Dijakovic and Keith Lee's reaction, I think it's great they're painting Keith Lee as a sympathy victim, so to speak. I really like the way Karrion Kross is obviously going to be this dastardly heel, but this is a dream match. But I think both these two, maybe within a year, will be up on the main roster. I'd be surprised. Both these two, for me, are far too good to be in NXT. They should both be up on the main roster already, really.
I personally agree with you. I know, as we say, Karrion Kross has been there, and he's already been fast-tracked, you arguably could say, to the main event scene and the NXT Championship match. But I agree with you. I think both have got something where they could carry the company. I think they both look legit. They've got great gimmicks, and I think that they would be believable at the top of the card in WWE on a Raw or a SmackDown. So I agree with you. I think hopefully in the calendar year we could see both of those guys there. As for the rest of the card then, I tried to put together some teasers where I think the direction could be going. I do remember a couple of weeks ago there was a bit of discussion that Johnny Gargano felt like he had some unfinished business with Finn Balor. Would you be a fan of seeing that match happen again on the TakeOver since we only had it a few months ago?
I think it'll be all right. I think it gives something entertaining, but I don't know how they make it different to the other matches. I think both wrestlers are so good. It's a shame they're stuck feuding with each other again.
It is a little bit. The only thing that I suppose goes into what goes in both of their favour is that it feels both roles are reversed. Gargano now clearly the heel, and Finn Balor seems to have gone full-on babyface once again now in NXT. Do you think that will add a bit more of a fun dynamic to the match, seeing the roles reversed?
Yes, maybe slightly different. I think the Johnny character really I'd like to see him be a bit more dastardly, really. I think he's a fantastic wrestler, but he's stuck almost in the moment of being this tweener in between. He's kind of halfish good, halfish bad, but this will be good. I just think, for me, Finn Balor really needs to go back up to the main roster. I think he's had his time in NXT now. He's had a few feuds. He's done what he's done. And he's obviously not making any difference on the ratings, which is the main reason why he's kind of there. I think it'd be much more appreciative of him on Mondays on Raw, really, for example. He'd add a lot to the main roster now instead of just being in NXT.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many matches that we didn't get to see with Finn Balor on the main roster, either due to times where he was injured or maybe not being on the same show as another superstar, say Randy Orton, for example. I can't really remember a match between those two. I'd love to see that take place. And I want to see that darker Finn that came to NXT back. I feel that he's kind of lost a bit of that edge. I'd love a heel Finn Balor on the main roster, but I mean, that's just me nitpicking at this point. Moving on of other matches then, I mean, it seems we're slowly building towards Io Shirai versus Dakota Kai as well. Team Kick getting the kick in at the end of the last week's show where Io Shirai just defeated Tegan Nox. Are you a fan of this match being put together potentially for a takeover?
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I would love to see Rhea Ripley added to it, make it a triple threat for me. I think although Io Shirai and Dakota Kai will be good, it'll be quite good to watch. I think you've got to put Rhea in it. I think if Rhea's got to be kind of getting her way back up the roster, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rhea's made her intent there as well that she wants to get back in that picture. I'm really happy that Dakota Kai's in there as well. And I think that at the moment, I believe it will be a singles match, just if I said myself personally. I can see if Rhea Ripley has a match. The Robert Stone brand has actually gained a new member this week. Could you see Rhea Ripley against Mercedes Martinez at TakeOver?
I think that'd be very good. But for me, I think Mercedes Martinez is locked in with Shotzi Blackheart. I think that's the route probably they're going to go based on this week's television, I'd guess.
Yeah, to be fair, I think it's a great point, and I kind of agree with that point. We'll have to wait and see how it's going to develop. Will we get a triple threat? I mean, that's a great idea, but we only recently just had it at the last takeover. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm sure with weeks going, we're going to be right in some way and fashion, and we look forward to seeing how it will turn out. Just one other match that potentially could happen. It seemed to start to build this week. I don't know if it'd be a takeover match, though. But the Cruiserweight Championship, of course, is a part of NXT as well. Could you see Santos Escobar against Isaiah Swerve Scott? Would you like to see that match?
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I think it's something different other than the Drake Escobar match. So I'd like to see it.
I think it could have some sort of excitement to it if it was to be put together. But that's what we've talked about NXT TakeOver 30 at the minute. I think it's going to be an exciting show when it is put together. Keep an eye on SCW as we actually get towards the show, and we'll be talking more. And, of course, predictions will be going on closer to the time around SummerSlam. But mentioning that word SummerSlam, let's go and talk about the main matches we are aware of so far expected in the rumour mill, shall we say. I think the most predictable and the most likely, of course, Braun Strowman to be taking on the Fiend Bray Wyatt. It seems to be full-on Fiend character now. Is it now time for that championship to go back to the Fiend from Braun Strowman?
For me personally, yes. I really would like to see the Fiend as champion again. I think Braun's done okay with the belt, and they've had this feud now for many months. You've got to pay it off now one way or another at this pay-per-view. Because obviously, at Extreme Rules, it wasn't even a match really. So I think it's now time to sort of pay this off. Fiend versus Braun once and for all, really.
I agree. I mean, we've been, like you say, going on for quite a while now. We've gone through a couple of pay-per-views with these two. It feels like it's been 3 or 4 months now. So it's time to get a payoff. And I agree with you that the payoff here is for the Fiend to get the championship back. Braun, he's had an okay reign, but I've said it numerous times previously in other videos, so I won't harp on too much about it for me. But the Strowman Express, the wheels seem to be starting to be falling off that title reign for me. It's just not connecting as well. I want my monster back. But would you like to see this as a traditional one-on-one match, or would you like to see a gimmick match? What would you like for this? I
think they've got to give him something, some sort of spectacle around it, really. I think both of them two in the ring aren't really that great. So I think it's got to have some sort of magic, particularly the fact you've got the Fiend there. It's going to be a quick match, I think. The Fiend doesn't really have long matches, does he, previously?
No, not necessarily. No, I'm trying to think. I think Daniel Bryan may have probably pulled out the longest match out of him. But again, we're probably only talking maybe 12 to 15 minutes there. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see what happens. At the moment, I've had to predict, I reckon we've probably got, like you say, a quick or fairly shortish match between these two. I wonder, because Hell in a Cell was not far off afterwards, would we get to a stage where those two would have that? But then will they still have the Hell in a Cell stipulation in the PC? Could you see that happening?
Maybe. I hope we got fans by then. I really do. We really need fans back.
I agree. We do need fans back by that point. And speaking of someone that's probably been robbed by fans by not being in attendance at that point, Drew McIntyre won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 36 without fans. It looks to now be facing his toughest test. It looks like Randy Orton could be the challenger, the greatest wrestler, apparently, after his Backlash win against Edge. That, for me, cemented and felt like it was the right time. We've had these two build on minor feuds now. It seems the time for them to clash at SummerSlam, with the big angle expected to take place on Raw this upcoming week. Are you excited for this match? I feel that it should be the headline for SummerSlam this year.
Yeah, this match for me feels SummerSlam. It's got everything, really. It's the main feud that's going to be building sort of on Raw. And you look at it, Drew McIntyre's been built fantastically as a champion since Mania. He's really give credibility to that belt. He's obviously basically beaten everybody. He's destroyed everybody. And the way they built Randy Orton, for me, Randy Orton potentially has probably been Wrestler of the Year so far, particularly during this lockdown period. His promos and his work and his feuds with Edge and stuff. This is the feud for me. This is the money feud. This feels like a title-worthy feud. The last few months we haven't really had main events for the title that feel like the main event level, if that makes sense. Which this is a main event level for me. This is what it's all about, really. This is what the perfect match really to headline SummerSlam. I agree with you.
Totally. I mean, when you look at it, no offense to Dolph Ziggler, John Morrison, The Miz, unfortunately their time as championship contenders seems to have passed them by. And even Bobby Lashley, I mean, he was built up well for a number of weeks, but where has he been since? You know, you could argue and say that Drew McIntyre he's been knocking them down, but now he's finally got a real challenger here. There has been something going in the rumour mill, George, and we'll just touch on it quickly with you. There has been rumours going around that maybe Randy Orton is going to be the guy to defeat Drew McIntyre, and Drew McIntyre will win the belt back when fans are around so he can really have his moment. What would be your thoughts on that? Do you think that would be a good idea for booking?
Yeah, I think that. I think the fact is you've had sort of Drew with the belt for quite a long time now with no fans. The trouble I have is if he does win here against Orton, where do they go? They've got no real heel then unless they're going to go to a rematch, unless they bring somebody across. So I think this is the place to do it, really. You could do it with Randy Orton. Then you've got the whole of Drew chasing Randy maybe to Royal Rumble. But I still think for me, the long-term plan for Randy Orton is he's going to have a match with Edge. I think Mania probably next year. I think that feud's not done. But I think this is the time really probably to get the belt off Drew. And I think Randy Orton's the one to do it, really. I think if you don't do it off Randy Orton, you're going to have a trouble getting that belt off Drew down the line. I just don't really know who else could take it on the roster currently.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a shock if someone else was to do it. And I actually 100% agree with you on every level there. I think that Randy Orton is the right time. It's the right feeling. Randy Orton's had an unbelievable 2020. Who would have thought to say 2020 we'd be going back after perhaps feeling what's been a stale few years for the Viper. He's literally just come out of his shell once again and just gone back to the level that we knew that Randy Orton was all along. And it feels that it's a worthy time for him to become champion once again. And I agree with you as well. I think a match is rumoured with Edge for next year's WrestleMania. Rumours according to Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer suggest an I Quit match, which was supposed to be for SummerSlam. But of course, Edge, had a pectoral injury, which of course has ruled him out for the foreseeable future. Looking elsewhere, I mean, now it's kind of guesstimate time, really, when we talk about the rest of the card here. But I mean, one match that I feel I want to say is the most confident of the rest before we just go into guessing the rest of the card of what we'd like to see is Asuka versus Shayna Baszler. I feel was a potential one here because, I mean, I feel Asuka's going to win the belt back here on Raw this upcoming week. Baszler has been watching on those, screens from a 90-degree angle. It's not good for your eyesight, Shayna. But if you're being brutally honest here, I mean, she might destroy Kyrie. Kyrie needs to be written off TV. Do you think that this fits together and it would work for the match?
Yeah, for me, you said how it is. I think ultimately it's going to be Asuka, Shayna Baszler. Shayna will be the one that I would guess that takes Kyrie off TV. That's exactly what I think will happen. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this match. I think this is something new. I think Asuka, Shayna are going to do some fantastic work. It's interesting that this position of Shayna has come from nowhere. The original rumoured reports, according to Mr. Meltzer, were that it was going to be Natalya in this spot, which I just don't know how that would have kind of worked. But going back to this sort of match and stuff, I think this is going to be a real good challenge for Asuka. They've got to get back to building Shayna the way that she was up until WrestleMania, because everyone's forgot kind of how over she was at that point.
Well, she destroyed everyone in the Elimination Chamber, including Asuka, eliminating every single person. So we need to get that Baszler back. It feels that she's just been underutilised and sitting catering. In fact, I mean, she even not catering on Raw Talk, which our troop actually said that actually it was actually not that bad. But I mean, that's typical R-Truth for you, isn't it? But I think that this is the right way to go. The question would be what we would do with Sasha Banks. I mean, I know me and you spoke off-air before, and you were the one that suggested that maybe a triple threat would be a fun way to go for this. But do you see that maybe Sasha could be involved with Bayley instead in a different role?
Yeah, I think maybe. It depends on whether they want to pay off this sort of Baszler this Sasha Banks versus Bayley match now. Do they want to pay it off now with no fans, or do they sort of want to wait until there's fans? Really, for me, that's the other match you've got to do on the card. You've got to do Sasha and Bayley. I think the way they built it so far has been great, teasing stuff. They haven't really done too much, but for me, this actually feels like a title-worthy match. When you look at the roster on the SmackDown side of things, there aren't a lot of obvious candidates to me that are up there that should be challenging for the title, unless you're going to make one all of a sudden in however many weeks you've got to the pay-per-view now.
It's so true, though. I mean, Bayley's just gone through everybody. But I actually felt for a long time they needed to do the match at SummerSlam. I kind of now feel that they're not going to pull the trigger. I just would have liked to have seen a tease or something. It feels like now that it's sort of gone away. So I think this is the point where we can start going into the matches that we feel maybe could happen or maybe we'd like to happen at SummerSlam. If you don't mind, George, I just go through my card quickly first, because we mentioned there about Sasha Banks. I actually think that because Bayley's not got a challenger, and I don't think they're going to go against each other, I've gone for the Women's Tag Team Championships as a prediction to go on the line here. And because there's such a fuss going on with Naomi, Naomi deserves a chance on Twitter. It's been going since the Karaoke Showdown. I've gone for a triple threat tag team match here, because what about a reunion? Of course, we've got Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross that would be natural competitors. But how about a reunion of Team Bad, of Naomi and Tamina as a team? Of course, they were together with Sasha Banks back in 2015. Sasha Banks actually defended Naomi on Twitter recently as well, after Booker T's comments and suggesting you make your own luck. You should deal with what you've given. I wonder if that maybe Naomi finds herself in the spot of SummerSlam. So I've gone for that as a triple threat. I wonder if that would be something that could happen. I wonder if Lacey Evans would have a partner and they could make it a four-way. I'll go for the rest of my card very quickly. I reckon the IC title. I reckon that Jeff Hardy will be the challenger against AJ Styles, purely because of the fact that I think that the feud with Sheamus needs to end. We'll have a better idea after the bar brawl, which ironically is this evening before we've recorded this. So if you are watching afterwards, you'll probably have a good idea if that's the direction continuing or not at this point. We mentioned Sheamus, and I like a good bully storyline. And where else can we go? And we need to find someone for Sheamus to pick on. I've gone for Otis to be the guy he should pick on, because it feels quite natural here of the Money in the Bank holder not being around on TV, and for Sheamus to be, well, the guy that he is. I think he could make some interesting TV out of that rivalry. They could put the Money in the Bank title on the line as well to gather a bit more interest for this match for anyone that may find it a bit lackluster, because it gives Otis something to do and he needs to start finding some momentum if he's the Money in the Bank holder. I've gone for KO. Kevin Owens against Seth Rollins. I think that the likelihood in the rumour mill is they might revisit that feud. It may be a way to try and give KO that momentum to get another win, since obviously he had to take time off after WrestleMania. I've gone for Matt Riddle against King Corbin. I think this could be potentially something that could be a kickoff worthy match, but maybe as it's Matt Riddle, they might want to put it on the main show and they might give it a few minutes. I mentioned, of course, the Intercontinental Championship. Well, how about the United States Championship? Well, MVP for me has been one of my favourites on the show so far. Him and Apollo Crews can finally decide who the real United States champion is. I've gone as well for one other match for the main card, and it's the Tag Team Championships from SmackDown. Cesaro and Nakamura, I've gone to defend in a four-way, and to make things interesting, of course, yes, the New Day are there involved, and as well as that, we've got The Miz and Morrison as expected, and to finish it off, to round it up, Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak, because, well, we've not seen him in the tag team division. I think it could be an interesting twist. I see The Miz recently say that he'd love him and Morrison to go against The Miz and Gulak. So I thought there'd be a good way to find everyone happy, all on the card under one title match. I've gone for two kickoff matches just to finish off as well. I've loved the Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville storyline. It's a shame they've not been on TV for a number of weeks, but I've gone for it just in case it could make a kickoff. And of course, we can't leave out the Raw Tag Team Championships as well. I've gone for the Street Profits to go in a triple threat, because they've faced Angel Garza and Andrade already. They've faced the Viking Raiders already. So the biggest match possible for me feels to put all three of them together at SummerSlam. So that's the card I've put together there. Georgia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like the card you put together. A lot of that does seem quite logical. You've got a couple of matches I've put as well, which is quite funny. I think it's a good card. You've got everybody on the card. Unlike me, I've only got a couple more kind of matches that I think will happen on the show. But I will go through what I think will happen. I've gone for Seth Rollins versus Aleister Black. I think they started building that this week on Raw. I think it's a SummerSlam worthy match for me. I think it's I'm interested to see what they can do. I was disappointed it happened on Monday because it feels like a pay-per-view match to me. So I hope they do that again. I've got MVP because Apollo Crews obviously at the moment unfortunately is out, and I've got him defending the title against Mustafa Ali. I think that's potentially a route they might go down now. Now Ali's back following his missing period. He's back now obviously with a big win this past week. And I've also got a tag team match for the SmackDown tag team titles of Nakamura Cesaro against the New Day. I found the SmackDown tag division is a bit thin, so I was struggling to think who they might logically put in that kind of place, if that makes sense. So I think it's a rematch. It would make sense. It would probably be okay. And then we've got the Raw Tag Team Championship, which would be a triple threat, I believe. The Street Profits, the Viking Raiders, Andrade and Angel Garza. For me, I really hope that Andrade and Angel Garza kind of get the win here. I'd like to see them sort of get the belt to further add to the tension down the line when they do eventually split.
I completely agree. I think there's some great matches in there, and I would love to see Andrade and Garza win the belts because I like them together. I really do. I feel they've been building for a long time that they could separate, but I do like them as a combination. I think you've done great as well to add in Aleister Black, Mustafa Ali, building for the future. I would love to find them a spot on the card there, and I do think that maybe you could have, I suppose, if to build cards of people I've not put in, maybe Ali could take on Lashley or, something like that. Lashley and Benjamin could be involved. I mean, the Hurt Business, those guys perhaps should be going for the tag team division as well on the Raw side. Who knows? But there's lots of things that we can do, and it certainly is some exciting elements there. But I do like some of the matches you put together there, and I think that you've got some logical matches put together there as well. I think it's an exciting prospect of what we could have for SummerSlam this year. Did you have any dream matches you said you want to do? If you were a fantasy booker, George, because I know sometimes we like to have a bit of fantasy booking.
Yeah, so what I've done is I've looked at the whole roster. There is one maybe slight fantasy in terms of one of the choices in one of the match, but I'll let you decide if it's realistic or not. Where do you want me to start, the main event or go upwards? It's up to you.
I'm happy for you to start wherever you'd like to, my friend.
Okay, so the opening match would be Daniel Bryan versus John Morrison. I don't believe they've ever had a match. I'd quite like to see it, something different. Daniel Bryan obviously isn't doing much at the moment. John Morrison's kind of stuck with The Miz. It would be good in ring if that makes sense. That's the reason why I've chosen that. We then go on to the Intercontinental title. It would actually be a ladder match, and I'd put AJ Styles versus Matt Riddle. I'd also have Ricochet, and I would have transferred Ricochet over to SmackDown because of ultimately the way that WWE at the moment are able to sort of move people with no notice. So I think they could do that. Ricochet for me, unfortunately stuck in the tag team with Cedric, so they've lost him a bit. Even with that documentary they've done, I'd like to see him go back to kind of where he was, if that makes sense. And then we then go on to the United States title. For me, because of what's gone on with the whole Apollo Crews and stuff, that title should be vacated, and I'd have a tournament. The tournament would come down to two people. It would be Bobby Lashley versus Kevin Owens. I think they could do a really physical match. I'm not seeing it, and I think it could be quite good. We then go on to the SmackDown tag team titles. We would do Cesaro and Nakamura defending the belts. They're defending against Shorty G, and I'd actually have Sami Zayn tag with Shorty G. I'd turn Sami Zayn. He's a baby. Let's turn him babyface. Let's do something different. He used to be a babyface. And them two together, I think it could work. So they're quite similar in that respect. We then go on to the Raw Tag Team titles. We've got the Street Profits, and they're going to be facing Angel Garza and Andrade, and a brand new tag team I've come up with. I would tag Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode together. I'd call them Pretty Wonderful. I think that's got quite a nice ring. I think Bobby Roode is not doing anything at the moment. He's so talented. I'd love to see him on there. I think, as I said, I think the Raw tag team division is struggling a bit, if that makes sense. We then go on to another one. This is a bit out there as well. We're going to do, there's an angle going on the whole time. What I'd like to see would be, you've got Otis and Mandy Rose. They started getting stalked by somebody. This is going to build up over weeks and weeks. And it's getting to the point where Otis receives a letter or receives an email or something like that. And it could say, if you don't if you want the stalking to stop, you have to put up your Money in the Bank shot. This will get to SummerSlam. At SummerSlam, the title's on the line. And guess who comes out? Let's see. It's Tommaso Ciampa. He's doing nothing at the moment in NXT. This is his debut on the main roster, and this is for the Money in the Bank title match. So you're basically going to get not the Money Back title. You're going to get the Money in the Bank briefcase, and that's going to be on the line, if that makes sense. And I think I'd give it to Ciampa because I'm not a fan of Otis as the Money in the Bank winner, if that makes sense. It's something different. There's intrigue over the weeks to see who's actually doing this and such. We then go into the Raw Women's title, and this would be a submission match. And it would be Asuka versus Shayna. I'd like to see that. I think they're both very technical. We then go on to a women's title match, which is Sasha Banks and Bayley. I think it's got to happen. It's a dream match for me, really. We then go on to the world title match, and this one is a last man standing match. It's obviously between the Braun Strowman and the Fiend, and there's a couple of different things to this match. There's actually a special guest referee as well. This is the one that I wasn't too sure if you think would be realistic. For me, I'd love to see a special guest referee of Cactus Jack. Brilliant bad. Bring Mick Foley back. We've got this whole Three Faces of Wyatt on the go at the moment. Cactus Jack, for me, is crazy. So you bring that on, and then you've got this whole... You don't know what's going to happen next, really. But the way I would build it is now Braun's disappeared at Extreme Rules. They need to keep him off TV until the pay-per-view. And what they want to be doing is, remember the days of, I think it was SummerSlam 94, where you had Undertaker versus Undertaker. And every week they're hinting about what's happened to this person, there's been sightings, etc., etc. I'd love to see Braun come back. But when he comes back as a slightly darker character. It's not just the Braun Strowman we know. Something's affected him, if that makes sense.
I love it.
So you delaying that. And then we then get to this is the actual main event as well. The last one, we've got Drew versus Randy Orton versus Seth versus Aleister Black. For me, it's you've got three people there. Any of them can get kind of pinned, and you don't know who's going to win. It's exciting for me.
Yeah, absolutely. A Fatal 4-Way has always got that silent element about it. And I think you've got a great card there on a fantasy booking level there. I mean, like you say, a Fatal 4-Way. I remember back in 2017 SummerSlam when we had, I think it was Braun, Samoa Joe, Brock, Roman. I thought it was fantastic at that point. Fatal 4-Ways can be done so well. I love the idea of the last man standing match between the Fiend and Braun Strowman, because you would feel with that the idea of those two, it just feels like a destruction derby. Do you know what I mean? Like the old days, see that sort of element on a pay-per-view. So I really like the idea of that as well. I really like as well the idea that you put together of John Morrison against Daniel Bryan. I think that those two together would have a hell of a match. I mean, John Morrison the other week against Matt Riddle, you could tell that they wanted Matt Riddle to be the star, but John Morrison, he stole the show on that particular event. So I really like some of the matches you put together the same. And I think Bobby Lashley, Kevin Owens, the United States Championship, I'm sure MVP would probably keep the belt. But at the same time, like you say, the idea is if the real champion is there and can't defend it, MVP could be in the tournament and lose part way through. And then, of course, it's a ready-made match as well, Kevin Owens and Bobby Lashley. I'd like to see them put that together at some stage as well. So no, it's a great collection of matches you've got there. I really like the idea. And like you say, people are swapping from show to show without reason at the moment. I think that that brings some interest into the TV station as well. So, no, I think a great job all round there. I really like it.
Thank you very much. I think it's just great to kind of create that intrigue, really. I think that's kind of maybe a little bit missing on WWE, that you haven't got sort of these mystery things going on or stuff going on where there is a payoff at the pay-per-view for me. A prime example is what I would say is this past week, Slammiversary, the build to that, because I haven't spoken to you before on the podcast, it was fantastic. And I think WWE really could learn from building a pay-per-view with intrigue going into it, really, for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. No, they did such a great job then. I mean, so many ideas and possibilities with the superstars coming in, and the matches themselves were exciting going in as well. Let's not just say it was all about a mystery person who was coming in. Like you say, the pay-per-view was done from top to bottom. And WWE needs to look at that, because is there an argument that they've lost a bit of connection with their audience when you look and see that the likes of, an eye for an eye match? I mean, is it something we want to see? Is a swamp fight really? I mean, I had a bit of buzz for it going in, but seeing what it was actually as a vision given to us, are those the kind of things that fans want in 2020? I think something has been a bit of a disconnect here, if you ask me. I do believe that when you look at sort of like what they've done for Slammiversary, like you say, they're with Impact Wrestling, and even AEW this week, I've done an AEW review up on the channel now, they're just bringing the fun factor back into wrestling. You need to see that fun factor. And like you say, some of the storylines there, the idea of Tommaso Ciampa coming in, and yeah, I'm not a fan of Otis winning holding the briefcase either, but an idea of to make a match, a stipulation, to put that case on the line, which both men you come up with there, even against different people. It's just something to add a bit more intrigue and twist rather than just a run-of-the-mill match with nothing on the line and no meaning at all.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the trouble you've got, even me, when I try to put that card together, you look at the roster, there's so many people missing that's off with, like Roman Reigns, and you're looking at John Cena's not around, and it's obviously must be a real struggle for them to be able to put these cards together. I do kind of feel for the creative and the bookers of WWE at the moment. I think it's kind of very hard for them. I think even me putting that card together, it was a struggle. It took me probably about an hour maybe.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, there's some of the people we've put in some of the matches, myself for sure, is actually hoping that some of those wrestlers come back to make those matches. We mentioned Mandy and Sonya Deville, arguably having one of the rivalries of the year for me, but at the same time, neither have been on TV now for well over a month, and you get to the point that all the heat that was gathered throughout this rivalry starts to fade away, and you start to think, is it important? And when they come back, if they've been away for that long, if fans have forgotten about it, will WWE just move on completely? Because we've seen it with other storylines where they started and they don't finish with it. So it's not a guarantee that they'll be coming back into the spots they've got. And it's like you say, so many people missing at this present stage that you can't tell if someone's coming or going. So it is a difficult job, and we have to sympathise with that. And I suppose it makes it harder for the real long-term booking. But WWE have to try the best with what they've got at present, because they do have a superior roster. I mean, we mentioned Impact. They have far more wrestlers than Impact do. Can they have a brand split? But maybe they have to find a way of just fading that, blurring the lines in the meantime if things continue as and when they are.
Yeah,
Go on, George. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, no. Last thing I was going to say on that was the things they've done great. The last two things I was going to say, the things they've done great in this lockdown period is Drew McIntyre. The build to him has been fantastic, and Randy Orton. They're the two good things. But when you look at the other side of the fence, which is the other title, it's been shocking the way they've built up Braun and the opponents he's gone against, like Bray continually. That tag team match against Miz and Morrison. They just really need to start having number one contenders that are number one contenders. That's all I was going to say.
I was just going to ask if you want to add another point on to what was being said before we moved on. And I think you make a great point. The challengers need to be the challengers, because, I mean, we do feel that there is a lackluster when you get the Miz and Morrison, even if it's a handicap match. You don't genuinely believe they're going to win. And Dolph can have whatever stipulation he wants under the sun. It's not going to change the belief. Yes, it made a very interesting narrative, and I really enjoyed their match with Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre Extreme Rules. But I never at one point had any doubt that Drew McIntyre was going to, he was going to walk away the champion. And I had no feeling of anything different happening. So I do believe to myself that, you need to have those people that are believable in those spots. And that's why we said earlier on, it feels more likely that we could see the likes of a Keith Lee or a Karrion Kross in the main roster, sort of Raw or SmackDown in the coming year, because they're believable. They're people that could be in that spot, rather than having your, people that have been there for 10 years or that are not going to win it now, or the people that are just too lightweight for that position.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I was going to say, elaborate on what you said, the problem is obviously with a Dolph Ziggler, let's look at where Dolph Ziggler was. He lost to Otis. He was a joke, basically. To go from being a joke to number one contender, where's the transition? You know what I mean? How does he get there? That's kind of what's out there really for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree as well. I mean, of course, they went on the old story with Drew McIntyre, but at the same time, like you say, if Dolph had put up some wins before he got to that spot, you would have believed it more, wouldn't you? Of course, like you say, going from losing the third match at WrestleMania, being in the love triangle, to going for a championship, it didn't seem to connect as well. And I think that's the real shame point when it comes to some of the booking that we're seeing in WWE. Because like you said, the people down the card that we're waiting to get to that spot, and Aleister Black, for example, you mentioned there in your main event, if it was there, I mean, you might as well put him in that spot, because of the fact that it's more believable, or more intriguing at least, for them to get to that spot and lose in an effort to Drew McIntyre than it is to see something that we've, arguably got no interest in seeing in Dolph Ziggler.
Yeah, I think the thing is, with that main event that I put together, there's a mystery there. You never know really out of the four. There's so many people there. It's not just an obvious who's going to win. But to be fair, Randy Orton and Drew's, it has got that feeling of we don't know who's going to win, which is great. It's exciting for me.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. And I'm very much looking forward to that match at SummerSlam if it is to take place. George, before we close off today, is there anything more you'd like to mention on the show?
No, it's been great to come on again. Thank you for hearing the card, and it's been great to chat some wrestling as always.
Yeah, very much indeed. And just to say to everybody, thank you very much for listening. If you have enjoyed the video, please give us a like. Why not subscribe? Thank you to everyone that's been subscribing to the channel. Over 500. We've gone past the 500 mark. Fantastic. And we're very thankful to everyone that is supporting the channel and spreading the word. And why not share it with a friend? If you know a friend that likes wrestling, just tell them to check out an SCW video. It's all we ask, and hopefully they'll enjoy it just as much as yourselves and as much as we do putting the content together. But that's all for us anyway. Thank you for listening as always and for watching, and we'll see you next time on SCW, the Wrestling Channel. Take care, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.